Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 28th of July, 2024. This is your host, Nigel Creaser. And today I've got the first part of my rerun interview with Mike Clayton. Enjoy. Hi, it's Nigel again. If you are listening to this, that means that you are listening to the old style of the podcast. You may like the old style of having it split into two pieces, but I know some of my listeners didn't. So what I've done, I have created the option for you to be able to listen to everything all in one go. You don't have to wait till next week. You could get it now. At the moment, it's just on Spotify. We'll be coming on Patreon as well. Costs you, was it £3 plus that? I think it is. Over a month. And that means you get the whole thing all in one go. So the other advantage, that'll be coming out on a Sunday. This one, you will notice, has just come out Monday. Wouldn't make a big difference really, but there you go. You've got it. You've got that choice. Helps me invest in better equipment and maybe a few other bonus items going forward. So if you can spare essentially a cup of coffee once a month, and you get the benefit of getting it earlier and getting it all together. So pop along to Spotify. Have a look in there where it is, and there'll be a little lock sign against one called number 132/133, John Henney, the voice coach. And that's the combined one, and you should be able to click on there, do what Spotify tells you to do to register and put all your payments in. Yeah, that's it. And the only thing, if you have done that and you do it, I don't know if I get details on it yet. It's very new, so send me. Ping me a message through whatever medium you can get hold of me, and you'll get a mention on the show. So again, thanks very much, and let you carry on with the show. Cheers now. So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links, in the way that it's set up, that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's varying different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again is nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy. Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast, episode 36 for the 28th of October 2019. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and this month the Sunday Lunch Project Manager meets Dr. Mike Clayton, the online PM course guy. But first, a word from our sponsors. This month, it's not so much a sponsor, it's just a slot to support an event that I think is worth supporting. On the 7th of November, the PMI UK are hosting their Synergy event in London and celebrating the 50th anniversary of the PMI. The core theme is about surviving and thriving in a VUCA world, or VUCA world. Did I hear you say, actually? That's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I'll be attending and hoping to conduct a few roving reporter interviews with some of the attendees, and if the organisers will allow me to, a chat with them and some of the presenters too. I hope to bring that as a Sunday brunch episode so you guys can hear those interviews. If you are down there and you see me, I'm bound to have a badge on of some description. Say hi and let me know that you've had a listen to the podcast, and jump on. We can interview you for the podcast about how you are enjoying the course, the conference. If you just search for PMI Synergy on Google, you'll find all the details if you want to grab a ticket now. If you know anyone or are interested in sponsoring the show, then please get in touch at sundaylunchpmpod@nigelcreaser.com. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, then please get in touch at sundaylunchpmpod@nigelcreaser.com. So in the news, I said last month that I would be editing the project management, the interviews through October, but that's not happened. Basically, a number of reasons, not least that when I started it, I realised it was going to be a monumental task. The transcriptions need some tidying up before I can even start then cutting the transcriptions out to get to the nub of the interviews. So with my intent to take part in the NaNoWriMo event in November, drafting up my first novel, it means it's unlikely that I'll release the interviews before March next year, I'd have thought, by the time I've gone through, edited, cleaned up, tidied up, and formatted. So that's putting that stake in the ground by the end of March to get out by then. The podcast interviews are coming along quite well now, and the upcoming episodes are November, we've got Ron Rosenhead. December, we've got Praveen Malik. And January, we have Sidar Oak. And then February, we have Emily Lujbrecht, which I probably said wrong. M the PM. I think I said it right on the interview, but I seem to have messed that up. You may have heard that we have had a couple of in-between interviews called the Saturday Brunch, where I'm trying to keep those to a half an hour, and they seem to be quite interesting. The next couple will be focusing on innovation, and the other on cybersecurity and how that applies to project management. In sort of personal update, I mentioned my judo escapades last month, and I did okay at the Veterans Commonwealth Championships. I was happy with my performance, but lost out to both the eventual bronze medalists, but performed better than I had at other competitions at that level. And then the weekend just gone, I fought at the British Masters, and again didn't come away with a medal, but I think I improved in performance, and this time losing out to the two finalists. So it was okay. I think that's probably enough from me for this month. I will hand you over to the interview. Thanks very much. Right, so today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Dr. Mike Clayton, who's a business author, conference speaker, facilitator, and trusted advisor. But as his website says, this is described what he does and not who he is. He described himself as a curious soul, committed to intellectual rigor, transparent communication, and highest professional standards. Formerly a senior manager with 12 years at Deloitte Consulting, Mike specialized in delivering an integration of complex change in diverse range of private and public sector organizations. His experience included roles in a 60 million program for BAA PLC, 2 major projects within the Post Office, extensive infrastructure projects for Transport for London, and keystone projects for the MOD, General Motors, and local government. He was director responsible for the launch of a new business for Vodafone Management, working in and leading a wide variety of highly successful teams, has given Mike a valuable insight into organizational change, teamwork, and leadership skills. He presents a personal point of view and real tools from the 13 years of consulting and management experience. This is combined with knowledge gained from working and training with some outstanding leaders in business and personal development. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Glad to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
And it should be an entertaining time. So let's crack off with the first question. Where did Mike appear from? Where were you born?
Well, we need to have that conversation if no one's had it with you, Nigel. Or do you just mean the hospital name?
I just mean the geography rather than the metaphor.
The now defunct Royal Northern Hospital, which isn't as far north as it sounds. It's just slightly north of the river in London. So yeah, I was born in North London, grew up in North London, went to school in North London. So that's me, really. I'm a Londoner.
Right. So you're born in North London, yes.
Yep.
Isn't it? I thought everywhere above the Welford Gap was north.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's North. I have no idea why it was called the Royal Northern Hospital, except possibly that it was quite close to the Northern Line, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that probably is. Yeah. So where, with you being there, where are you now? Are you still in that area? Or
no, I moved out of London. What would it be? About 2002. I moved into the borders of Surrey and Kent. Technically Surrey, but you wouldn't know it looking at a map unless the border was marked. It's a little kind of cusp. But then 10 and a half years ago, with my wife, we moved to Hampshire, which is where I'm now sitting in the market town of Alresford, just outside Winchester.
Right. And for those people, I've got quite a few American listeners to the show. That's
the proper
in
Winchester.
Yes, in the south part of England.
That's right. Yeah.
So you mentioned your wife there. Family, kids?
Yep. One wife, one child, one daughter, 10 years old.
10 years old. You're
what about
busy
you?
Then. 12 and 7, my girls.
All right. Oh, you've got girls too. Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes, it's an interesting time.
Yeah.
The 12-year-old knocking on 13.
Yeah, we've got that to come.
Yeah, knocking on 27. So, yeah. So you mentioned that you grew up in London.
Yeah.
And when you were growing up in London, what did Dr. Mike Clayton want to be?
I wants to be Dr. Mike Clayton for a start. I think my mother wanted the doctor more than I did, but no, I was always interested in science right from as far back as I can remember. But there was a TV series, and I'm going to date myself rather badly here for anyone who remembers it, called The Key to the Universe, which was about the then remarkable new discoveries in particle physics. Right. And I just decided that was for me. And I wanted to be a physics researcher and discover great new things. So that was the plan from about the age of 12, 13, very clear plan. Nearly came about, could have come about, but then changed my mind at some point.
All right. So that's it's the usual sort of thing. I've not heard someone who's at 10 or 12 said they want to be a project manager yet.
No, it isn't the sort of thing that comes up, is it? And it's a shame that one of the things I often say when I'm training people is that really and truly project management is one of those skills that ought to be taught properly at school, and not just call it a project and then have kids running around like lunatics trying to make something at the last minute. But teaching proper project management skills at school would be such a benefit to young people and to society.
Yeah, and I've had that conversation myself before. I think it's the organisation skills that every single thing you do around life it can be a project.
Yeah.
If you're painting the living room, if you're doing the garden, and the guys will have heard on other ones where I've talked about the fact that I tried to introduce a Kanban board into my family when doing some gardening stuff, which didn't quite work. So I made a different technique.
Oh, I created a very very kinesthetic, very Kanban board technique for my daughter. Actually, I basically got a piece of chalk. We've got these kind of flagstones which are covered in moss, and it's starting to eat into the mortar. So I wanted it off, and my knees aren't as good as they used to be. So I knelt down, and on each flagstone I wrote a sum of money, and I told my daughter that every time she cleaned the moss off, the last thing she could do was clean off the chalk and claim that sum of money.
That's a very good technique. I think I might use that.
But I did get warned by my wife that if when we were planning our wedding, that if she saw anything that resembled a Gantt chart, then the wedding would be off. So I used to work breakdown structure instead.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think we try to apply it. It becomes in it when we realise that it. I think it's partly to do with the fact that we get so used to thinking in that kind of manner that if you and that's the way our brains organise things now. And I find whether it's simple things of using a Trello to organise to keep our shopping list, using Trello to keep ideas of things, and it's just that's a good place, a good bucket to hold it into, and then you can take that and then start thinking, as you say, as a Gantt chart, you start thinking your dependencies, you start thinking, what have I got to do on that? And it just comes natural when you've done it for as long as we have. Certainly as long as I have. So obviously you got completely obsessed with particle physics and education. What did you do then from that point of view?
So theoretical physics degree, PhD. Actually left the idea of particle physics behind for my PhD and went into low temperature physics. So researched liquid helium-3 in the A phase, for anyone listening who knows anything about low temperature physics, which possibly if you're listening, that'll be you. And then for reasons that are still not completely clear in my mind, when I got offered a lectureship, I decided I wanted to try something different and decided to go into consultancy, management consultancy. And it's one of those that I think a lot of people can find one particular point in their life where they made a big decision which could have gone two ways, and always wonder. I haven't got any regrets about the choice I've made. Everything good in my life came as a result of the choice I made, but I've always wondered what my life would be like if I'd made the other choice, which was to accept the lectureship and become a full-time academic physics researcher. Where would I be now? Would I have a Nobel Prize?
Might be the next. You might have been the alternative Brian Cox.
Well, yes. Well, I did my PhD at Manchester, as it happens.
Right.
In fact, in the research group that's now headed by Andre Geim, who is a Nobel laureate. Wow. So, yes, things could have been different, but I'm very happy with my life as it is now.
That's the way to be, isn't it? It's kind of, you've got to, as you say, you get those moments of choice, and you've just got to. You jump with it and you go with it, and I found a number of the people I've spoken to, they've found a similar step where something either imposed or something as a choice of them has meant that what they were aiming at isn't where they've gone, but where they've ended up with the project management, they've applied the same energy, enthusiasm, and professionalism, for want of a better word, to the project management approach, and found that they get similar sort of rewards that they were getting doing the other thing.
Yeah, and I think that for me, I approach project management, I suppose, in a fairly rigorous, logical manner as I did science. So I think the scientific background has served me well. I think, yes, it is possible to be that kind of soft, cuddly project manager, and I've known people who really are not scientific in any way, shape or form, and some of their approaches I find frustrating, but they are equally as successful just by shifting their focus and making up the gaps that appear to me to be there in a different way. So and that's another thing that I love about project management, is the way that there's such a big wealth of tools and techniques and methodologies that there's room for every style.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting you say that. With Colin, who was on the June episode, Colin Ellis, there's in his new book, the project book, he's got a section about different sort of types of project manager, and it maps on really closely, I think, to the a model called the DISC model.
Yes.
Which some people are aware, some people aren't. I picked it up from a podcast called Manager Tools 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Probably actually before that, I'd read a book about it in another guise from another different person, but kind of got reintroduced to it later. And I find that it's those behavior tools, and it is, you will have, say, those 4 different ways of project management, and you will apply them. You've got your default manner, as you say there, you've got your scientific background that takes you down a certain level of detail and rigor that you would need to put in there. But also I imagine that you lean on the other styles of project leadership when you need to in certain projects, whilst it may not be your natural immediate go-to. I think we all change a little bit, same with the normal behavior models of DISC, and it's kind of I find it interesting thinking of it that way, because you can I am not a detailed person at times, but I can be very detailed and very precise. I'm a failed accountant, and I can get down into that very detailed level. Yeah, it's not where I naturally live, but sometimes need to, and I have to remember need to.
I think that's, I mean, for me, anytime I hear anyone arguing that one way is right and another way is wrong, I immediately question their credibility, because, and it's not that I think compromise is such a fantastic approach, it's the fact that flexibility.
Yeah.
You have to have a variety of responses. Nothing frustrates me quite so much as the waterfall versus agile debate, because you get these kind of really fixed views on either side, and yet the reality. But I tell you, it's
I always go with that one. It's the screwdriver and a hammer. Yeah. You use the right tool.
Yeah. But if anyone likes the idea of a personality test for project management, but wants to have a bit of fun with it, not serious, on my online PM courses website, there is a "What is your project management personality?" quiz, which exposes 7, I think, personality types. It's not entirely serious, although everyone who's done it and given me feedback says it's spot on. It's not scientific. It is just a bit of fun, but it captures the nature of how people approach project management. And I have had people saying, have I got the right answers? And of course the answer to that is yes.
And no.
You haven't told me what personality you came out with, but it's the right one.
Yeah. But if you after this, if you ping me along across the link to that, I'll include it in the show notes for people so they can get a hold of that and have a listen, have a go at it.
Yeah.
And I'll do so myself as well. So when you moved into management consulting, what was it that dragged you into the bright lights of management consulting?
Well, I think when I was an undergraduate, as well as doing a physics degree, I was heavily involved with the student union, organising all the events, entertainments across the student body, and I kind of really like that, and I like the idea that you could take a big or a small event and you could plan it and you could make it happen, and there was a huge sense of satisfaction, and it was very real. And that was what kind of frightened me, and a bit about the research is that it was the long termness of it. Yeah. Of course, then I didn't realize that projects could last many years too. But the idea of doing a project and getting that kind of almost instant gratification and it all, so that's what attracted me to project management, was the possibility of taking on projects and advising people, and that kind of drew me in. And the more I learned about the project side of it, the more I gravitated towards project management as a specialism within consultancy.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. So I'm just going to ask you a question there that you just answered before I'd even asked it. You must be psychic. Is that one of your personality traits? I don't know. Just going on to that. So, sorry.
You were going to ask that question.
Yeah, exactly. So within your management consulting and within your initial PMing, so what sort of industries have you been in? I know I mentioned some earlier on. What are the industries have you worked within?
When I started in the consulting, I was with a niche, small consultancy, and all our clients were in the local public sector. So local authorities were my main clients, housing associations to a degree, big NHS. At the time, they weren't trusts, they were regional regions and things like that. But then when my firm got bought out by what was at the time Touche Ross, then became Deloitte, it expanded out to central government, to voluntary sector, large international charities, but also manufacturing. I've worked in manufacturing industry, telecoms, financial services, consumer business, and transport sectors. I have to say that has been the best thing about both my career as a consultant and then as a trainer, training people across the UK, is the exposure to such a variety and diversity of different types of industry, sector, whatever you call it, and the different people that come from those. So I've had some fantastic experiences and learned about so many different sectors.
Brilliant. Sounds like that diversity is always, I think, something that appealed to me within the project management arena, was that chance to get something new. And maybe that's my slightly flaky mentality of yes, I quite like that new shiny squirrel a project, because it's always I find that whilst getting the stuff over the line is good fun, and starting the project also is good fun. That bit in the middle sometimes can get a bit weary, can it?
Yeah, but that is I do find that exciting, that bit of learning the new environment. And it's a question I get asked a lot in training, because I do a lot of live training in the UK, and one of the commonest questions is, do you have to be an expert in whatever it is you're delivering as a project manager? And I think there are two answers that you'll hear, which is yes and no, but mine is very clearly no. Your expertise is in project management, as long as you've got A, the humility, but B, the kind of the technique of drawing in the experts that you need and listening to them and understanding how they can drive the technical side of it. You can then focus on really how do you coordinate all of that and make it all work, and how do you engage the stakeholders and manage the risk and stuff. So I've pretty much never delivered a project when I was with Deloitte where I was going in knowing the sector, and quite often knowing even knowing the technology or whatever behind the project. It was always something new and discovering that, and that's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I think and I'm in your camp with that thing. I think there may be some industries where you in certain levels, the knowledge of having that whether it's that sector or that technology knowledge starts to become very valuable when you're in things like and again supposition that the construction industry and the sort of major engineering industries, it kind of starts to become an advantage there, because it's very detailed, very technical, and probably easier for you with the science background to be able to grasp them quicker than someone like me from the finance background. So
yeah,
and I think it does depend on the nature of the project, doesn't it? Because if you are building a bridge, there are a number of things that within building a bridge, a massive bridge across the river, there are things in there you just don't know you don't know.
Yeah,
and that's where you get the holes, and that's where, as you say, you absolutely need those good people who are specialists. And if you have, and I see it quite often, I find quite odd job advertisements for project manager / architect / a business analyst, and it's kind of, which do you want?
Yeah, well, there is that little bit of, I'm a huge believer that we shouldn't go too deep in our knowledge and expertise at the expense of breadth. But I don't think it's credible to claim that much depth across that much breadth. That is the jack of all trades, isn't it? Yeah. And it's not plausible.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, what you do is, as you step into different roles in different industries, as part of project manager as being just common sense, is you go deeper while you're there.
Yeah.
And you mug up on the industry, you mug up on the technologies, and you get to know them. And as you say, you've got those experts around you. You sit with them and go, explain it to me in baby language so I can get an understanding properly.
Yeah, and when it is very technical, the reason for having those conversations isn't so that you can get by with that knowledge. It's so that when something hits you, you actually know which expert is the one to go to, or where the boundaries lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not trying to become that expert. You're just trying to figure out who is the right expert for which issue, and that that's always worked very well for me.
Yeah, and I think working out what the dumb question to ask is.
Yeah.
That's, if you know what the question is sometimes the hardest thing. Not knowing the answer. It's working out what question you should ask first.
Yeah.
So you went into the management consultancy, and you kind of was looking towards that project management role. What do you remember as being your first, as you remember it being a proper project that you were project managing?
The first one was, I do remember it. I don't remember any details of it, or what exactly for it, but it was a small property development. We were working for a local authority in Essex, and it was a small property development, and it was really helping them to manage the planning side and the capital expenditure side for their contributions. I can't remember any more detail than that, but I do kind of remember in my mind some of the personalities involved, and I'm starting to understand that there was more to project management than just kind of keeping making a to-do list and stuff, which is kind of what I assumed it was. It was like my conception of project management then was, at that stage, was it's a to-do list and it's actually making sure you do everything on the list. And I thought that would pretty much get you through anything. I don't think I was far off, actually, but there are other wrinkles to it, and that's what I kind of started to learn at that stage.
Yeah, I've heard project management described as who does what by when.
Yeah.
And at its basic fundamental, that's what it is, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Although curiously, at that time I didn't know the word stakeholder, but I was discovering then what stakeholders were and how powerful they are in terms of delivering or not projects. So it was great learning.
And they're elusive as well, I find.
Yeah.
There's always one stakeholder somewhere that will pop up just after when you needed them to have told you something, and you'll have one pop up going, but what about me?
Yeah.
And you think you've got everyone on board, and there's one that will pop up.
Yeah.
That was your first. What was your biggest project? And when I say biggest, what I don't mean necessarily is money, number of teams, what felt like the largest, and it might be impact on your customer, it might be impact on society, whatever definition of large meant to you, might be just personally big for you. And what did you learn from it?
I think probably it was the largest in just about any sense, and it certainly was the last major project I worked on before leaving Deloitte and moving into training. It had a huge impact on me and the way I think about many aspects of project management today. And it probably had the biggest impact on a chunk of the world. It was the congestion charge in London. So for listeners who aren't Londoners or aren't British, aren't aware, what would it have been? I suppose it would have been mid-90s. The then Mayor of London decided that to reduce congestion, he would impose, I think, the first citywide road user charging to try and reduce congestion in London. And Deloitte were appointed as the principal consultants and project managers for the project. I wasn't the project manager for the project. That was a chap called Brian Green, but I was brought on board to help with the master planning process, and then stayed on the team to lead the sort of sub project, I suppose. You could think of it as a program, I guess. So the component around the tender process,
Right.
and so that was a big project, obviously a huge project. Came in at I suppose around £1 billion worth of capital expenditure, and I had a large team working for me on the commercial side, and so yeah, I guess that's the one. And I always felt particularly proud of that, because years earlier, in a conversation late at night, as you have, we were trying to figure out how do we solve the London transport traffic problems, and I'd suggested pedestrianising inside the Euston Road. Now the congestion charge didn't go quite that far, but interestingly, that was the boundary of the zone. So I kind of called it years ahead.
Yeah.
And as a Londoner who preferred to travel around London by public transport, I'm very kind of proud of what that achieved for a while. Now traffic's bounced back, and we're probably back to where we were back at the turn of the century when it went live.
I don't know if I imagined this, but I'm sure I read something somewhere they were talking about having sort of vehicle-free weekends or weeks within the congestion charge area or around there, where they were going to actually fully shut the roads. Or someone had proposed that, which kind of goes towards what you're saying there, is pedestrianised a lot, isn't it?
Well, it would. I mean, yeah, and actually there is a chunk of central London which, if you pedestrianised it and let buses and public service vehicles through, it could probably work. I think you'd have to find a way to allow commercial deliveries at some point, but I don't know. I'm not a policy wonk. Technically, I know that pretty much whatever you want can be made to work, because there are project managers out there and smart people who can figure it. But yeah, I think at the moment, I think the big game is on emissions charging now, isn't it? So
yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So what did you learn from that? What was the biggest learning from that piece of work?
Well, it's interesting because when you interview Peter Taylor, and his famous contribution is the idea of the lazy project manager.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that, I felt that title before I got to know Peter and read the book, I thought that doesn't sound particularly good. Rather like Project Management for Dummies, or the whole Dummies series, I thought was kind of insulting to readers. But until I discovered how well written quite a lot of them are. Yeah. But when I read Peter's thing, I thought, well, actually, this is something I've been talking to audiences about for a long time, but in a different way, because I got accused by my boss. I kind of discovered how to really let go as a project manager and let work streams and work stream leaders kind of run the project.
Yeah. And
I got accused of my boss of being complete waste of space. He said, Mike, why are we paying you? Every time I come past, I see you sitting on a sofa drinking coffee and chatting with one of the managers. What do you actually contribute to this project? I said, well, Richard, most of my contribution is sitting on this sofa drinking coffee, chatting with the managers, and thank you for your concern about my caffeine intake. But I kind of set up the whole of that kind of tender process to be modularized, with different experts running the evaluation of the different tenders, because there were, I think, about a dozen different major commissioning packages, some of which had to be commissioned in a joint way so that the technologies would work together. Yeah. But and I'd taken what I'd learned on previous projects in terms of getting the work stream leaders, who were the experts, to plan their work packages. I gave them the constraints, and I said, figure out how you're going to deliver it, and figure out how you're going to hit each of these milestones. And they did. And I then figured, well, once I'd done that, then actually when we get into delivery, my job is to make sure that they're sticking to their plan and help them out if they're not, and coordinate all their activities, but not actually get involved in them actively. And so I think I kind of make the joke that actually once you're in delivery, if you've done your job right as a project manager and your team are well supported, then you are going to spend quite a lot of time sitting on a sofa drinking coffee, which is a different way of expressing fundamentally the same insight that Peter's peddles far more successfully than I do.
It is, and I think it did touch some sort of logic with me when having read Peter's book. And as you just said there, that whole point of you get the right people, you give them the right instruction, you give them that autonomy. And as as you say, those stream leads were kind of project managers. It's if you're not giving him that autonomy, and it's that people talk about the servant leadership thing, and I'm guessing a lot of your conversations there are right. What's stopping you doing this, and what's stopping you completing this, and how could you help?
Yeah,
to remove those blockers, and they talk about the idea of the Scrum Master of removing impediments, and that's the same kind of role that you're doing there. Really, you're sitting there with those guys and going, "What do I need to do to help you do what you've committed to do properly and easily?" And rather than going, "Right, show me how you're doing every bleeding thing and let me tick everything off." And as I said before, me not being a detailed person, I think delegation is underused in project management. Is from what I've seen.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly, I created online courses not for the project management sphere, and then started selling them on my project management website. And the one that sells the best is the delegation one. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if I'm doing my job right, then I don't have to worry about how each of my work streams is going, because I've had a recent update, which means if one of them runs into problems, I should be aware enough that everything else is in a strong position to then turn my attention to doing what I can to help out. And in fact, I think the single biggest contribution I made to any of those work streams was when one of my team leaders said, I've we've messed up. We know we've got the numbers wrong, but we can't figure out where they've gone wrong. You're like this because you're an accountant. And of course, the thing about being in Deloitte is, although we were the consultancy, we did have some sisters and brothers in another building. And of course, so I could make myself useful by making a couple of phone calls. And within an hour, I had a highly experienced forensic accountant turning up in a taxi, and within an hour he'd found where the numbers were wrong, and it was a simple error, and he found it, and it was all sorted. And so my contribution was finding the resource they needed, and I'm glad you mentioned servant leadership, because that is very much my thing in terms of the model of leadership that I like best, and that is the role of the servant leader, is to find the resources and to protect your team from the crap that organizations throw at them, so they can get on with their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously that was your biggest piece, and it's saying the congestion charge, depending on your point of view, whatever, obviously a massive successful piece of work.
Another great sponsor of the show, it comes in the form of Air Manual. Air Manual is it's a tool for documenting process, which a best practice is it's a company formed by one of my interviewees, Alexis Kingsbury. Essentially, and I kind of summarised why my view of where we see documentation, a lot of my experience has been people will document something, a process, they'll put it in a Visio diagram that gets loaded onto a SharePoint site or something similar, and then a bunch of that. So then once that diagram's been shared with senior management, they're happy they have a process in the business. But then the detailed procedures underneath it might be in Word documents, in just poorly kept and not linked easily and not updated. And what Air Manual does, it allows you to put in it's a tool for doing this kind of thing. You whack it in, the service in there, get in there, put in your process, your flow, and you build it down to as low a level of detail, even to the point of checklists where people can check off they've done it. So it creates that guided checklists, easy to create, easy to maintain, and all in one place. and no one's kind of rooting around to find the SharePoint, and then when you change to new SharePoint services and all that stuff, it's all there. So if you pop along to nigelcreaser.com/airmanual, there's a bit more detail there and a link there to click on to go and get. I think they offer a trial and things like that. So it's something that I think can easily reduce the amount of errors, rework, etc. within our organisation. So take a look. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and come back next week and we will have the second part of that interview. Look after yourself. Bye. Hope you enjoyed that. But you're thinking, ooh, I wonder what the next bit's going to be. Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? You heard at the beginning of the show where I said there's a way around that. So if you're really itching and you want to hear the next bit of this show, jump down to Patreon, have a look, find the one that's got a little lock on it, click on it, and you'll be able to get the second half along with the first half all together. And you won't get this annoying bit or the annoying bit at the beginning that I just done as well. So, yeah, give it a go. It's only a price of a coffee. Cheers. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye. My latest... The latest affiliate that I've got on the show now is Riverside. I use Riverside to do my interviews, Riverside FM. It kind of offers you a whole, if you like, micro studio management producer tooling and goes beyond that. Has a really good free layer. And I've been using it for a while now. I find it really good. When I've had issues, even though I'm not on one of the higher paid levels, the support has been quick, responsive and of high quality, and people keen to help me. The organisation seems really good, the product seems really intuitive, and quality is really good as well. And it's a clever way of doing it is when you're recording through your browsers, so you're not got loads of desktop resources being used compared to some other products that I've used. And what they also do is they stream a lower quality version of it up onto as you're doing the interview, so you're not burning bandwidth while you're doing the interview and potentially impacting on the quality of the conversation. And then at the end, it uploads it, the higher quality from your browser. It's just a really good way of doing it. So if you are thinking of doing a podcast and know someone's doing a podcast, I would recommend using this tool. I found it really good. Best of the tools that I've tried using to date. And you can get that at nigelcreaser.com/riverside, and that will redirect you to my kickback page on their site, and there I will get a little kickback from them. So take a look. Thanks.